Hello there, friends and followers. This is Q8 Pilot, and I welcome you to another Microsoft Flight Simulator video. We are currently situated at London City Airport in the United Kingdom, and today we are going to be examining the flight model of the Cessna 152. In this video, we are going to be examining the aircraft behavior both on the ground and up in the air to assess the physics and to also see how the aircraft responds to different weather conditions. So without further ado, let's get started. A quick disclaimer before we begin this video. Please do note that this is the preview build version of Microsoft Flight Simulator, and things may change from now until official release. The first thing we're going to do in this video is we're going to start this Cessna 152 from its cold and dark state, and as we do so, we are going to be monitoring the head shake, the engine vibration, the G-forces, and how the aircraft actually handles on the ground. We are going to change fuel and things like that to change the payload and see how the aircraft behaves for the exterior and from the interior as well. And then we're going to take the aircraft for a short flight. We are going to do a few maneuvers to see how it handles up in the air, and we are going to do a stall test. And once we're through, we are going to head back to London City Airport, land the aircraft, and then we're going to change the weather and see how the actually the aircraft behaves on the ground and up in the air. So without further ado, let's remove the flight yoke and let's go ahead and turn on the battery and alternator. Let's make sure the fuel shutoff valve is on. And now we can put the mixture on full rich. And we're going to crack the throttle just a little bit here. And we can now start the engine. And we have a good start. We're going to take the RPM back down to about 1,000 RPM. There we go. Let's make sure our beacon lights, not landing light, but we need our taxi light and nav light. There we go, taxi. All is good. And let's go ahead and turn on the avionics. Avionics are now turned on. We're going to set the transponder to on. 7,000 is fine, and now we are actually ready to go. But before we do so, let's take a quick look here at the weight and balance. So this is the we've got about 50% fuel. The payload is about 67%. Now the first test that we're going to do is we're going to release the parking brake, and we're going to see how much power we need to apply to get the aircraft moving. Then we're going to set the brake again, and we're going to add more payload and more fuel to the aircraft and see if that changes anything. All right, so let's switch to external view here, and I'm going to release the parking brake. Let's make sure the parking brake is released, which it is. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to start applying power. We've got about, let's see here. So it took about 10% throttle to get the aircraft moving. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go to load and balance, and we're going to set the fuel to 100%, and we're going to set the payload to 100%. All right. So now everything is in red. No, it's looking okay. All right. So it's happy. Okay. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to give it exactly the same amount of power, and now the aircraft is not budging. Right, let's increase the power a little bit, and now we've got the movement there. So just a little more power, and the aircraft started moving. So slightly more, probably 15% more, with the aircraft loaded, almost at full capacity, actually full capacity there. Okay, so not much of a difference there, but close enough, I think, to resemble the difference in weight. Okay. Let me now put the fuel back here to about 10%. All right, and we're going to take the aircraft to about 8% here. And we're going to set the parking brake. Release the parking brake. All right, let's release the parking brake, and now let's see how much power we need to apply to get the aircraft moving. Yeah, slightly less, definitely less power. So I'm at about a little less than 5% of throttle, and the aircraft is ready to go. So definitely the weight and balance affects the aircraft performance. And now what we're going to do is we are going to taxi to the runway on the other side of the airport, and we're going to take off. All right, let's, before we do this, actually while we're doing this, we can add just a little more fuel here. Let's put this also back to 40, 39 or so, and we're going to add about 50% here. All right. Now what we can do is we can head over to the runway 27, and take off. The scenery in the United Kingdom is, the entire United Kingdom actually looks pretty good. Even in the areas where, the areas that are not handcrafted, they actually still look very good. All right, so one thing I've noticed is as we started the engine, there was absolutely no vibration or no engine vibration. Head anticipation obviously is not simulated as well, and neither are the G-forces. So these are probably, I'm not sure if they're simulated in another aircraft, but definitely not in this Cessna 152. As we taxi our way to the runway, we can see that there is no bumps. It could be because the taxiway is pretty smooth. But let's go ahead and slam the toe brakes both together here and see what happens. So definitely the aircraft takes its time, and yes, there is that dip, but there isn't really any head shake or any movement of that sort. So yeah. Although, by the way, it's a setting. There is a setting in the settings menu where you can turn head shake on and off. It is turned on, so I've made sure that it's turned on before starting the video. But apparently, it is not. It is not simulated somehow. As you can see, also as we make the turns here, the left and right turns, as you can see, the head anticipation is also not modeled or not simulated. All right, we are ready to go now. We are here at the runway. I'm going to turn on the landing lights, taxi light off, the strobes are on, and we are ready to go. Runway 27. All right, and let's give it full power. All right, so we are at full power. I can feel there is a little bit of wind here that I'm doing a little bit of compensation with the rudder to keep the aircraft on the center line. I must say that it's very touchy, 60 knots and rotate, but the sensitivity of the flight gear will largely depend on the equipment that you're using. I'm using the Alpha Flight Control in this video. So we are now taking off here from London City Airport, and as you can see here, the sky is cloudy, almost overcast, but not quite there. But the aircraft handles pretty fluid, I must say. It is a very fluid experience. It handles pretty well. I can definitely feel the effect of the wind here as we depart. Again, very small corrections using the yoke to keep the aircraft flying in the current heading. That looks gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. Okay, so we are at approximately 1,000 feet. We're going to start doing a few maneuvers, and then we're going to head back and land the aircraft. So let's switch to external view real quick. And here, as you can see the the aircraft movement up and down. There's a slide, bounce from the air as it hits the aircraft fuselage. And that is something that is very realistic indeed. So in terms of how the aircraft handles or how it actually reacts to the wind seems to be simulated fairly well in Microsoft Flight Simulator. All right, let's switch back in here. We are at approximately 1,500 AGL, and here's what we're going to do. We're going to begin with a left turn followed by a right turn. So here is our left turn, and as you can see, the aircraft is doing what it's supposed to do. It's very, very fluid, and I can say exactly the same thing about a right turn. Very fluid. Alright, so what we're going to do now is we're going to bank to the left, and I'm going to do a left turn with left rudder. So here we go. And the aircraft is definitely doing what it's supposed to do. Remains to be very, very fluid. Alright. And that checks okay. Alright. The final thing we want to do is we want to do a simulated stall. So I'm going to head in the direction of the airport. The airport is right ahead of us now, right there. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to idle the power. We're going to do this in two ways. The first is I'm going to idle the power and pitch the aircraft up. And that should reduce the speed. And we should start hearing the stall warning sign. Alright, so this is, ladies and gentlemen, not a realistic behavior, if you ask me. The aircraft is definitely losing altitude. The stall warning horn is on. However, that is not what a Cessna 152 would do when stalling. And I've seen a lot of videos on what the aircraft actually does when stalling. So definitely the stall warning horn is sounding. The aircraft is definitely falling off the sky, but it actually is not very realistic in terms of how this aircraft actually stalls in real life. All right, let's give it some power here, and we're going to try something else now. So we're going to go to about 70 knots here. We can always make a turn and come back to the airport. So what I want to do is I want to just go back to 1,000 feet again. So let's do that. 1,000 feet. All right. This time, what we're going to do is we're going to extend flaps in landing configuration, and we're going to idle the power completely. And now we're going to see what happens there. Alright, so as you can see now, the stall warning horn has definitely sounded, and the aircraft now, it is kind of, yes, that is very accurate. Now, when we added the flaps, the aircraft has stalled correctly, and that is exactly what I've seen in all the videos stalling a Cessna 152. And by the way, the videos that I have seen had the flaps down in landing configuration. So we're going to put the flaps back up now, and we're going to head back to the airport and land the aircraft. So in terms of the stall behavior, definitely with the flaps down, and this is based on the videos that I have seen, they've had the flaps down and the aircraft behaves in exactly the same way. However, without the flaps being applied, the aircraft stall behavior, I don't think is very accurate. But guys, again, I'm not a real world pilot, so if what you've seen just now is an accurate representation of the stall behavior of the Cessna 152, please do let me know, so I can also correct myself. Okay, so we're going to head back over to the airport now and land the aircraft. And we're going to do a series of tests with different weather conditions. Alright, so let's set the flaps for landing. I can definitely feel the turbulent air here as we approach London City Airport. There's an aircraft, looks like, taking off now, and hopefully we won't collide with that aircraft. All right, it flew the opposite direction. Well, no, maybe not. I'm not sure what this aircraft is doing, but it looks like it's all over the place. So, all right. So we're going to land now, and once we are through, we are going to change the weather, and we're going to see what the aircraft does on the ground, and then we're going to take off again and do similar tests with different weather conditions and see how the aircraft behaves. Right, here we go. Let's slow down here a bit. Yeah, definitely really nice. It's very, very fluid, I tell you, I give you that. And it does really feel, you do feel the realism here as you come into approach the runway, the effect of the wind on the aircraft. All right, power to idle. That's a bit of a floater there, and touchdown. All right, so here's what we're going to do. Let me hit the brakes here real quick. So what we're going to do now is we're going to also assess some of the effects that we would expect to see, for example, during rain. So I'm going to bring the aircraft to a complete stop, and I'm going to set the parking brake. And now what we're going to do is we're going to come here to the weather, and we're going to change this from live weather to rain. All right? As you can see now, you can see the rain on the windshield, and that looks reasonably realistic in my view. I'm not sure about how the movement of the drops. Definitely this part here looks more realistic on than this part here. But the raindrops, I think the modeling of the drop themselves look pretty good. But the movement is highly unrealistic in my view. All right, so if we go to if we switch to external view, you can see the surface refraction, and you can see definitely that the surface is wet. So you do get that effect that the surface is wet. You can see the raindrops here again on the taxiway. That looks absolutely gorgeous. Really, it looks really, really good, and it's very, very well made. And of course, all the surfaces surrounding the area now are going to be wet, so everything is actually wet now. So so this is, I think this is well done. The rain effect, I think, all in all, I think is done pretty good, I must say. It could use some improvement here inside the cockpit, but from the external view, I think it looks pretty good. Now, one thing that we'll expect to see is as we move during, when we move the aircraft, we'll expect some water splash from the wheels. So let's go ahead and see if we get that as we move the aircraft. So I'm going to give it a little bit of power here, and this is exactly what I gave it earlier to get it moving. So that's exactly the same power that we needed to move. I don't really see any difference. I don't see the water splash for one, and I don't see anything different in how the aircraft actually handles. So let's try to do one thing. Let's try to do a few turns here. Definitely I don't see a difference in how the aircraft handles on a wet surface. So I really can't see any difference moving the aircraft here on the taxiway. But let's go ahead and do something else. All right, so we're going to bring the aircraft to a complete stop, and we're going to set the parking brake. And now we are going to set the weather conditions to snow. All right. Now, We have changed the weather, and as you can see now, all the surfaces, of course, the textures have changed. Everything now indicates that there is snow. You can see the snow falling as well. The runways or the surfaces are all wet, as you can see here. All right, so if we release the parking brake and we give it a little bit of power, actually exactly the same amount of power to get the aircraft moving. No splash whatsoever from the wheels. As we hit the brakes, it takes exactly the same time to stop the aircraft. So I don't think that there is any difference in the aircraft's behavior relative to the weather changes that we have made. Definitely nothing has changed there in terms of how the aircraft behaves. So the behavior remains unchanged here as I move the aircraft using the rudder on the surface here. It feels exactly the same way as if as if there was no rain or no snow. So absolutely no change there. All right, we're gonna go back here, and now we're gonna set this to a storm. All right. And as you can see, the depiction of storms is phenomenal. The lighting looks absolutely phenomenal. Look at that. However, having said this, you will notice that there is no difference again from what I'm seeing. So I'm applying exactly the same amount of power to get the aircraft moving. So I don't think the friction coefficient is properly set for this aircraft because it moves exactly the same way. Even when we changed the weight and balance, there was very little change in the amount of power that we had to apply to get the aircraft moving, which I don't think is accurate. So with maximum load and almost no load, it was pretty much the same amount of power applied to get the aircraft moving. Now with this thunderstorm, applying the brake, the power is on idle. It takes about the same time to stop the aircraft when full brakes are applied. All right, here's what we'll do is we're going to go back here now, and we're going to move this to live weather again. All right, now this is what I talked about in the first video. You can see that all the surfaces are still wet, and they will remain to be wet for a little while until they dry off as an effect of the weather. All right, so as you can see now, the surfaces started drying off again. They're no longer wet, and what we're going to do is we're actually going to go back to let's see here. Let's go back to rain. And I'm going to change the temperature here to 3 degrees. Precipitation 20, aerosol density, we're going to add a little bit there. All right, so pretty bad weather, and we're going to now take off. We're going to assess two things. We're going to assess how the aircraft handles on the runway, and also what the aircraft does as we begin to take off from from London City Airport. So let's give it full power, and let's see what happens now. Right, again, the rain, I think the rain effect looks a lot more realistic as we start moving. Definitely on the sides there. In terms of handling, I think it handles pretty much the same way as when we had no rain. So I don't see any difference there. All right, let's take off. All right, I don't see any specific difference in the way the aircraft handles, but I definitely do like the rain effect. Let's take a look here at the external view. So definitely there is no change in how the aircraft handles there. Okay, let me come back here, and I'm going to say right here, and we're going to add the coverage, altitude, All right. Again, I don't really see any change in how the aircraft actually behaves in those conditions. All right. What we're going to do is we are going to go to Storm. And now we can see that there is definitely a change in how the aircraft is flying. So I can definitely feel the turbulence. Let's switch to external view. Yeah, there is a little bit of turbulence now here, and as you can see, oh, look at that. Ooh. Yeah, so now definitely we can feel the storm. The aircraft, the way the aircraft responds to those pockets of air is actually done pretty good, I must say. I remember flying this aircraft in the vicinity of Elstree in the United Kingdom, and when we encountered pockets of air as we flew, it was pretty much the same kind of the same feeling that I feel here in this aircraft. So definitely, in terms of the aircraft behavior, I don't think that it is spot on, I must say. But I think in a lot of respects it is well done, I must say. And of course, this is two things. This is a stock aircraft. So normally with stock aircraft, you know, you will not see things accurate or very accurate, I must say. But that's my experience, of course. It's not a fact of matter, but it's just my experience with other flight simulators. All right, let's switch back now to live weather. And you can see now that definitely the aircraft can take a breathe now from the thunderstorm. And it's flying exactly the same way, by the way. But I must say that it during the thunderstorm, when the aircraft actually encounters pockets of air, it does respond very well to the weather forces, to the wind force. Whether the force coming from the top, the bottom, the way the aircraft handles is, I think, is spot on. There are a few things that are not very realistic in my view. Things like that we've seen the ground behavior is definitely not there. I don't think that it's simulated in this specific aircraft, and I haven't tested all of them, but definitely in this aircraft, changing the weight and balance, changing the weather, surface, a wet runway or a contaminated runway, and doesn't seem to have an effect on how the aircraft is operated. And so overall, in terms of the flight model, I think it is reasonably modeled, but it is not 100% accurate. Having said this, I think it's still extremely enjoyable. It is very immersive, for sure, and it is representative of what you would actually see in real life, in a real aircraft. So, yeah, I think it does feel like a Cessna 152 to a very large extent. There are a few things that I am sure will either be part of the roadmap for Microsoft or probably third-party developers that will start developing things like AccuFeel and things like that. And I'll tell you, there is really no way around third-party developers, especially with a sim of this size, of this magnitude, and of this complexity. With all these modern technologies being used, I'm sure that the framework is extensible for developers to develop a lot of different things. And I don't really see Microsoft Flight Simulator as a sim platform that will kill the development of third-party plugins and add-ons. To the contrary, I think that it offers a brilliant platform for developers to start developing really high-quality add-ons for the sim. So, yeah, all in all, I think I'm very pleased with this Cessna 152. The Cessna 152 comes with all Microsoft Flight Simulator tiers. So whether you buy the standard, the premium, or the premium deluxe, you are going to get the Cessna 152. Again, it is one of my favorites in Microsoft Flight Simulator. I really like this aircraft a lot. It probably, the reason being, it's very well modeled in terms of the visuals, but also it's an aircraft that I have received real world training on for a number of years back in the days. So we're gonna head back here to London City, and we're gonna land the aircraft for the second time. Right, here we go. And power to idle. Hopefully we won't float as much, and touchdown. Now the touchiness or the sensitivity of the yoke and the rudders tells me that at some point we're probably going to need something like, response curves. but yeah, I think overall the aircraft handles pretty well. The flight controls are a bit touchy, I must say, so it takes a little bit of effort to get used to them. But all in all, I think it's a very good aircraft. I think it's well made. I think the flight model is reasonably representative of what the real 152 is in real life, but it is definitely not 100%, and there is definitely a lot of room for improvement in terms of the effects, the actual effects like the head shake, the engine vibration, head anticipation, the roll on the ground, the aircraft behavior on the ground. The water splash is definitely not there. There is actually no water splash even when you attempt landing on water. So all in all, pretty good. However, there's definitely a lot of room for improvement. Well, folks, this pretty much brings us to the conclusion of our video today. I hope that you have found this video to be useful and insightful. If you have any questions, please do post them in the comment section below. On behalf of the entire Threshold team and for myself, Q8 Pilot, I want to thank you for tuning in today. And until next time, please take care of yourselves and each other. And I will see you all very soon. Thanks for watching, and bye-bye for now.